Let's focus now on how we can add some interactive elements to bring the design to life. Let's go ahead and close out the Layers panel since we won't really be needing that right now. For that, I can come and just toggle the icon here towards the left, or hitting Command on the Mac or Control on Windows, and the letter Y will actually toggle between each of those panels. When you look at the two artboards that I have here on the right-hand side, the one towards the left is a bit taller than the one on the right, and both are as a whole bigger than the normal height of the device I'm simulating, which is an iPhone X. In order to simulate what would fall below the fold, as it's called in screen design, I want to define the default height of my prototype, or what's known as a viewport. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and move over on the screen so I can see it a bit better. And I'm going to select the two artboards. I'll click on the name of the first artboard, then holding the Shift key down, I'll click on the second artboard. From here in the Properties Inspector, I want to come in and set some of the common attributes between the two artboards. Notice here in the scrolling section, I have a drop down and I have a dashed line. That's indicating that the two artboards have a different value there. If I click off on the side and then click on the first artboard, I can see that it is set to scroll with a none value. If I click on the second one, it's set to scroll with a vertical value and a particular viewport height. I want to set the same values with both artboards, so for that, I'll go ahead and click on that first artboard. Holding the Shift key, I'll click on the second artboard, and now here in the Properties Inspector, I want to override any attributes that have been set. I'll come to the scrolling section, and in the drop-down, I'll set it to vertical. From there, I want to set the viewport height. So I'll click into that field and type in the values 812 and then hit return. When I click off once again and then click on one of the artboards, what you can see is the viewport is now set at just around this spot. If instead of working with a numerical value, I want to visually set my viewport size, I can press and drag to set it wherever I'd like here along the artboard. I'm going to go ahead and stay with the numeric value, so I'll undo that change so it reverts back to 812. Now that my content's pretty well set, I'm ready to define the interactions between my artboards. To do so, I'll switch from the current mode that I'm in, the design mode here in the upper left-hand corner, over to prototype mode by clicking on the word prototype. For the most part, the XD interface is not changed. The difference here is that the Properties Inspector here towards the right will now show me interaction properties rather than design properties. What I want to do is come in and design a wireframe flow, or areas that my stakeholder can interact with to navigate throughout the experience. I'm going to begin with a really simple tap gesture to navigate from this first circle here towards the top over to that second artboard. What I'd like to do is go in and select just the circle. So to do that, I'll come in and click once. This is going to select the entire repeat grid section that we designed a little earlier. I want to dig on in to that circle, so I'm going to double click a second time, which is going to tunnel me in to select just the circle object. I can see that it's selected because it has the blue outline. And I can tell that I'm now able to define a wire because of the arrow that's coming off of the object to the right-hand side. What I'd like to do is now wire this object to my other artboard. To do that, I'm going to come to that arrow and press and drag. Now, as I do so, I can drag off in lots of different directions. If I come up to the edge of my design canvas, it's going to actually scroll to allow me to get over there to that edge. Let's see if I can get back here without too much trouble. So with that wire still selected, I'm going to press and drag until I get to the second artboard, and then I'm going to release. Now, if you happen to click off a little too much and you no longer see the wire available, so if I were to click here, for example, I can still bring that wire back up by clicking once and then double clicking a second time to make sure I have it selected. Then in the Properties Inspector here towards the right, I see the options that I have to define my interaction. In the trigger dropdown here towards the top, I want to make sure it's set to tap for now. You may notice there's lots of other trigger types, everything from tap to drag, even voice commands and keyboard shortcuts and gamepad devices. This is all lots of fun for you to explore as you become more familiar with the application. For now, we're just going to stick with tap, and we'll leave the rest of the default values alone by clicking off on the side. I'm now ready to take a quick look at the work that I've done. The only other thing I want to check real quickly is where I've set a starting point or the home artboard for the flow. You'll notice here with this Browse To artboard selected, I've got a little blue house to the left there. This is going to define, even if I had many artboards in my project, where it is that my preview or my prototype begins. If, for example, I wanted to start my flow on the second artboard, I could click on the name and then in the left-hand corner here, click on that icon to enable it as the starting point. I like it on that first artboard, so we'll go back by clicking on the name and then clicking on the icon to make sure it's blue on that left-hand side. I'm ready now to look at my desktop preview using the Desktop Preview app. This is one of many ways I can preview the experience, and it's the quickest way for me to check my work or show it to someone else who might be sitting next to me, or if we were in a conference room, I could easily project it up on a screen. To bring up the desktop preview, I'm going to come here to the upper right-hand corner and click on that little play button, which is going to bring up the Desktop Preview app. I can now come in and navigate through my experience. Notice as I press and drag, I get a scroll bar on the right indicating that it's a tall page. If I press and drag back down, it'll scroll me back up towards the top. And notice that if I roll over the area where I defined a hyperlink or a click spot, that cursor changes to a hand tool. When I click it, it's going to dissolve from that first artboard to the second artboard. When I'm done, I can just come in and close the Desktop Preview app by clicking on this close button towards the upper left-hand corner. From here, I'd likely continue to come in and add links to, say, the back button here on the second artboard so I can at least navigate back and forth between the two artboards. For now, we'll go ahead and leave the prototyping features as they are so that I can show you some ways to organize your design content into reusable parts.